Boost converters are pretty remarkable. They take an ordinary DC voltage and step it up to something much higher. With the right setup, you can even pull thousands of volts from a single 1.5 volt AA battery. All it takes are three simple parts: an inductor, a capacitor, and a switch that can flip between two positions. That's it. Just these three make up the core of a boost converter. Let's make this idea visual with a simple analogy. Picture a small water pump that can push water up to a maximum pressure of 10 pascals. This pump is connected to a cylinder with a weighted piston. As water flows in, the piston rises. The higher it goes, the greater the pressure beneath it. But once the piston's opposing force matches the pump's limit, 10 pascals, the pump can't push any higher. The motor's still spinning, but no more water enters. So here's the puzzle. How could we lift that same weight even higher without changing the pump? Any guesses? What if we add a water wheel tied to a heavy flywheel? Let's analyze that. At first, the flywheel blocks the waterway. Water can flow only once it starts spinning. When the pump starts, the flow pushes the wheel into motion, and as it gains speed, water reaches the piston and lifts it toward the 10 pascal limit. Here's the interesting bit. Even though the pump can't push any harder, the flywheel's stored energy keeps the wheel turning and keeps forcing water into the piston. The pressure rises beyond the pump's own limit, maybe up to 20 pascals, purely from that stored rotational energy. Once the flywheel runs out of momentum, the piston side now holds the higher pressure. That difference pushes water back and makes the wheel spin in the opposite direction. Water flows out, the wheel gathers speed the other way, the pressures head toward balance. But the flywheel doesn't stop exactly at balance. It overshoots. It keeps moving, pulls more water out of the piston, and creates a pressure difference the other way. Now we're back where we started, with the pressure pushing the wheel anti-clockwise again. This repeats, an ongoing oscillation. Water sloshes back and forth, storing energy in the spinning flywheel and releasing it into the piston. That back and forth motion is the heart of a boost converter. It's all about trading stored energy between two components to reach a higher output than the source can provide on its own. If that picture feels clear, let's map it onto an electrical circuit. Swap the water system for its electrical twin. The battery is our pump, supplying a steady pressure, voltage. The flywheel becomes the inductor, storing energy in a magnetic field and resisting sudden changes in current. And the weighted piston becomes the capacitor, storing electric charge, with its voltage rising just like the piston's height. Connect these pieces together, and the energy starts moving back and forth. The current ramps up and down, the capacitor voltage rises and falls, and the inductor pushes and pulls on the flow, just like the flywheel did in the water system. Let's look more closely at what's happening to the current in the circuit and the voltages across the inductor and the capacitor. If you're not yet comfortable with inductors and capacitors, I'd recommend checking out our earlier videos. Links are in the description. But here's a quick recap so you can follow along. The inductor stores energy in a magnetic field and resists sudden changes in current, just like the flywheel resists sudden changes in motion. Once the current is flowing, it doesn't like to let that current change too quickly. The capacitor stores energy as electric charge. Its voltage shifts as current flows in or out, just like our piston rising and falling as water pressure changes. With that picture in mind, we're ready to see how a boost converter uses these two components, plus a switch, to turn that tiny battery into a much higher voltage source. Let's push the analogy a bit further. There's still a problem with our setup. Even though the flywheel can shove some extra water into the piston, it always slows down, reverses, and eventually pulls the piston back down again.
So how do we stop that from happening? How do we keep ratcheting the piston higher and higher instead of letting it drain every time?
Here's a neat trick. What if we give the water an alternate path? When the piston reaches its highest point, we briefly disconnect it from the pump and reroute the flow through a separate loop that only includes the pump and the flywheel. In that loop, the water doesn't have to lift the piston at all. It just keeps spinning up the flywheel, packing more and more energy into its rotation. As the flywheel spins freely in that loop, it speeds up and stores even more energy. Then, right when it's going flat out, we reconnect the line to the piston. The flywheel's momentum now forces extra water into the cylinder, pushing the piston even higher than before. And as soon as we notice the flywheel starting to slow down, we flip the connection back to the alternate path and let it spin up again without the piston holding it back. By repeating this switching action at just the right moments, we can keep nudging the piston higher and higher, one step at a time.
In theory, there's no real limit here. We could lift an incredibly heavy weight or reach pressures far beyond what the pump alone could manage. The pump's built-in pressure limit no longer matters. It's the flywheel's stored energy that sets the ceiling. The more energy we can pack into that flywheel, the higher we can drive the piston on each cycle. If you've followed the analogy this far, you're basically right on the doorstep of how a real boost converter works. The switch is the real key. By flipping at the right moments, it keeps the inductor's current flowing in one direction and lets the circuit charge the capacitor to voltages far beyond the battery's own, sometimes even into the thousands. Each cycle adds roughly one more step of input voltage. The inductor isn't just dumping energy, it teams up with the battery to push extra current into the capacitor, boosting its voltage higher than the source could alone. When the inductor runs out of stored energy, the switch reconnects it to the battery to recharge, and the cycle repeats, nudging the capacitor a little higher each time. After all these analogies, you should have a pretty solid picture of how we can step up a DC voltage using just an inductor, a capacitor, and a switch. If we plot the current and voltage across the inductor and the capacitor, the story becomes even clearer. Once the inductor is energized and then connected to the capacitor, it generates whatever voltage it needs to keep its current flowing in the same direction. That's the key idea. The inductor doesn't quit just because the battery can't support a current anymore. As its magnetic field collapses, it forces the current to keep going, even if that means creating a voltage higher than the battery itself. Each time this happens, the capacitor's voltage rises by another step, and the reverse voltage across the inductor rises with it. If this still feels a bit abstract, that's normal. There's a lot happening at once. Current building in the inductor, voltage rising on the capacitor, and the switch constantly steering energy between them. It may take a couple of replays, but once the pieces click together, the behavior of a boost converter feels completely natural.
Before we go any further, let's do a quick refresher on inductors. If you're not familiar with inductors and capacitors yet, I'd really suggest checking out our earlier videos. Links are in the description. Here's the key idea. An inductor only generates a voltage across itself when the current through it is changing. If the current is perfectly steady, the inductor's voltage drops to zero, and it behaves like an ordinary piece of wire. But if you apply a constant voltage across an inductor, the current can't stay constant. It ramps up or down in a straight line, changing at a steady rate that depends on the direction and size of that voltage. Keep that behavior in mind as we move forward. It's the cornerstone of how a boost converter manages and redirects energy.
Now let's get to the fun part, how we keep the output voltage stable. We've already seen that if we keep switching non-stop, the capacitor's voltage will keep climbing with no real upper limit. But what if we only want, say, 40 volts? Here's the problem. If we leave the switch in position A, the inductor keeps charging straight from the battery. The capacitor might sit at 40 volts, but the inductor current just keeps ramping up. That's dangerously close to shorting the battery, and it would drain itself in no time. If we do the opposite and leave the switch in position B, things get even stranger. The circuit starts acting like that oscillating setup from earlier. The capacitor doesn't just discharge, it can actually charge in the reverse direction. So the question is, how do we avoid both of these extremes and hold the output voltage right where we want it?
My first thought was maybe we could use a 3-position switch so the inductor can be temporarily disconnected from both A and B, essentially a neutral position where no energy flows. But there's an even simpler and smarter fix. We can place a diode between the inductor and the capacitor. That way, current can flow into the capacitor but not back from it. The diode acts like a one-way valve, stopping the capacitor from discharging through the inductor. Once we add that diode, we can even simplify the two-way switch into just a single switch that connects and disconnects the inductor from the battery. The diode takes care of the rest, automatically routing energy in the right direction. And with that, we've got an almost complete boost converter circuit.
When the switch is on, the inductor starts storing energy. It's building up its magnetic field. The moment we turn the switch off, that stored energy has to go somewhere. So it pushes current through the diode and into the capacitor, charging it up. Repeat that switching cycle and the capacitor's voltage keeps climbing. Once it reaches the level we want, we can simply leave the switch open. The diode prevents the capacitor from discharging back into the inductor, and with the switch open, the inductor can't ramp its current any further. All the problems we ran into earlier are now taken care of.
Now we can hook up any load we want in parallel with the capacitor, and the capacitor becomes the source that powers it. As the load draws current, the capacitor's voltage will naturally start to dip, but that's fine. We just resume the switching and charge it back up from the input side. While the load is pulling energy out, the inductor is topping the capacitor back up through rapid switching. Both happen at the same time, so the voltage across the load stays almost constant. It's a beautifully clever setup. And now it's easy to see why the switch is such a critical piece of the boost converter. In real hardware, that switching is handled by a MOSFET, or sometimes a transistor, or an integrated switch inside a controller IC. A PWM controller drives that MOSFET on and off thousands or even millions of times per second.
Now let's move on to the maths. Take a look at this circuit and focus on the input voltage and the output voltage. As we discussed earlier, the load is constantly pulling energy from the capacitor, and the inductor is constantly feeding energy back into it through switching. When those two flows balance, the converter reaches steady state. In that steady state, the output voltage hardly changes within a single switching cycle, so we can treat it as effectively constant while we analyze the waveforms.
Now think about what the switch is doing. Part of the cycle, the switch is on, and part of the cycle, it's off. One full on-off sequence is the switching period, and the ratio of the on time to that total period is the duty cycle. Once we define the duty cycle, we can express both the on time and the off time directly in terms of it. We'll use those expressions in just a moment, so keep them in mind.
With the input and output currents treated as constant, let's look at what happens across the inductor during the switch on and switch off intervals. First, the switch on case. When the switch is closed, the power supply and the inductor form a simple series loop, so the inductor sees a voltage equal to Vn. And from the inductor's voltage current rule, a constant positive voltage means the current ramps upward at a steady linear rate. So the inductor current rises in a straight line, just like this. Now the switch off case. With the switch open, the path now runs through the supply, the inductor, the diode, and the capacitor. If we ignore the diode drop for simplicity, the inductor's voltage becomes Vn minus Vout. Since Vout is greater than Vin in a boost converter, that voltage is negative. And again, from the inductor relationship, a constant negative voltage means the current ramps downward at a steady linear rate. So the inductor current now falls in a straight line, like this. So during switching, the inductor's voltage looks like a simple square wave, plus Vin when the switch is on,
and V in minus V out when the switch is off. That square wave voltage produces a triangular current waveform in the inductor. And here's a crucial steady state requirement. The inductor has to start and end each switching cycle with the same current. If the inductor doesn't end each cycle with the same current it started with, that mismatch builds up over time. The average inductor current will either drift towards zero or climb toward a very large value, and the output voltage will slowly drift with it, either collapsing or running away. So this condition is absolutely essential.
Over one full switching cycle, that means the change in current, delta I, must be zero. Now, keep the inductor's VI relationship in mind. Voltage across L equals L times dI by dt. The slope of the inductor current is set entirely by the voltage across it. Let the switching period be t. In steady state, the total change in inductor current over that period is zero. And if the net change in current is zero, then the average voltage across the inductor over that same period must also be zero.
Don't just memorize that, follow the logic. Zero net change in current means zero average voltage across L. So the positive voltage during the on time and the negative voltage during the off time have to cancel.
Now we substitute T on and T off using the duty cycle expressions we derived earlier. After simplifying, we arrive at the classic boost converter result. V out over V in equals 1 divided by 1 minus D. And remember, the duty cycle D is always greater than 0 and less than 1. This equation tells us something powerful. If the inductor and capacitor are large enough that the output hardly moves during a switching cycle, the duty cycle directly sets the boost ratio, in the ideal case. But real hardware is never perfect. Component limits, losses, and current constraints all place practical caps on how high we can boost the voltage. This video is already running long, so I'll save the practical design side for a future episode. It takes a lot of time and effort to make these videos, and your support is what keeps this channel going. If you'd like to help us grow, I'd love to invite you to join our Patreon community. And a special thanks to all my Patreon supporters. You're the reason this work keeps moving forward. If you're creating your own educational project and you need clear, engaging science visuals or explanations, I'm open to collaborating. Send me a short brief about your project, and if it aligns well, we can build something together.